All right. So good afternoon to you all. If you're in Ghana, it's an afternoon. Some parts of Africa, it's an afternoon. Some parts, it may be an evening. But good afternoon to you all for joining in on this very special workshop on the SEADE Policy Finance Dissemination webinar coming to you from the AAU and our other partners who are joining us here. And I'm glad to have you all join us on this very, very special day, 22nd. I know many of us are preparing for our season's holidays, but here we are trying to do something equally important. So I want to use this opportunity to welcome you all to this very special final edition of our webinar series on the AAU on the SEADE project. I wouldn't want to mince words. I would want to take this moment to introduce some very special personalities here for us all to acknowledge. The very first is the Director for Research and Programs, who is joining us here, Professor Frederick Atuama. Prof, I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us here, Prof. I also want to introduce the coordinator for the SEADE project, Strengthening Europe-Africa Digital Ecosystem, who is also working with the Standby's Europa Zentrum institution in Germany, in the person of Eva Koff. Eva, thank you so much for making time to be here. Thank you so much, Eva. That's radiant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also to all our stakeholders who are across the continent, higher education stakeholders who also have very keen interest in AU-EU cooperation, also in the AAU's exploits, what we've been doing all this while you've been with us from day one, and you are always interested in what we do as AAU. Thank you very much, our stakeholders, for making time to be here. We believe that this session will give you the insights you need in trying to also contribute your efforts in AU-EU collaboration. Let me start off to call upon my colleagues to give some opening messages. These are remarks that they have kept in their hearts to share about how the SEADE project has transcended from month 1 to month 24. So let me just first of all call upon okay, so let me call upon the very first one, who is the coordinator herself, Eva Koff. I know, Eva, you are caught up in here quite abrupt, but I believe that you have got something wonderful to share with us. So Eva, please take the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Egimon. Yeah, really happy to be here and to hear all about the great work that AAU has been doing to monitor the impact of SEADE and to compile recommendations of the lessons that we've learned with all the pilot activities that we've conducted. SEADE is coming to an end now by the end of the year, so it's just a few days left. But I think that the legacy will live on, and part of that legacy is the great work that AAU has been doing. So I'm really excited for this webinar and to hear about the policy recommendations that you've compiled.
Thank you very much, Eva, for the succinct word. And another very special colleague who's also been very instrumental in our activities. He hails from Kenya with Wazi App and has been very, very supportive towards the AAU's achievements in this project, and the person of Mr. Joseph Chitoti. Hi, Joseph. Please, let's have just a brief word from you.
Yeah. Hi, Giman.
Hi, Joseph.
Good to hear from you. Yeah, you're right. Most of us could be going already on the festive seasons. And as we do that, it's quite interesting that we are closing SEADE with bang, actually, to share these recommendations following the great work that we have done over the last year and this year. So it's truly has been some good work, and to the team that is here, it would be interesting for you to share your ideas regarding what we are going to share, and we get to know how to solve some of these challenges that are facing the research and innovation ecosystem. I am Joseph Shitote. I am part of Wazia, based in Kenya.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate. And just as I was just wrapping my head around this colleague of mine, of ours, he actually came into the space. Mr. Gideon Breffo has just joined us. And Mr. Gideon, I'm glad you're here. He's also a very, very important stakeholder. If you look at the AAU's trajectory when it comes to the SEADE project, you can't rule Mr. Gideon Breffo out, because he's been very, very supportive to the AAU. So I'm going to also allow him to also share his brief word with us.
Hello, good afternoon.
Minutes. Hi, Gideon. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Sorry to be here late. Greetings to everyone. I'm glad to be here to talk about this policy brief. And I hope that we're going to have a very interactive session.
Thank you very much, Gideon. So let us now move straight into the activity. My word with the team is just brief. We are privileged to have had the company of these great partners in Ghana, in Senegal, in Kenya, and also in South Africa. Many of these colleagues were not able to make it here, but truly they have been very supportive. The AU team have been incredible, and we will share a lot more through the PowerPoint slides that you see about how this project has been very, very, very transformational to not only our lives, but also to the digital ecosystem in Ghana and also Africa. So we can go ahead, but before that, we can go ahead with the very first part of the PowerPoint, which will be led by Mr. Gideon Breffo. So we can go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so good afternoon to everyone once again. And I'm glad that we have you all here. Talking about the SEED project. It's a very important project in the field of research, innovation, and digital across Africa and Europe. And we all know how it has been when research works, especially those taken in the universities by master students and undergrads that end up on the shelves at the school's libraries, only producing acidic smell. And for those of us also in the innovation space, there are a number of innovative ideas that people come up with and they don't get to the market. So this project sought to build a framework that will support innovators, researchers, students, lecturers, all of them with a route to market strategies that can help them take their ideas or their research activities to those that really need them, and also to see to it that they are applied. We did not build it as a standalone project. We drew support or ideas from some of the legacy projects that have already taken place in the EU funded project. So on the screen, we see most of these ones, like the African EU project, which provides capacity building, webinars, and other teachables that can be drawn on by innovators and especially those in the digital innovation space. We have the EBN network, we have the AEDIB network, the Enrich in Africa platform, which happens to be the foundational block for the whole activity because is the repository that brought together all the activities under the SEADE project, so that if you are here and you have not already registered on the Rich in Africa platform, please do that, as that will provide you access to all the capacity building activities that we put together, and those that are drawn from the other projects, and also some webinars that we also undertook, and the access to some of the investor network and pitching opportunities that you can lay your hands on. So please do that if you have not. We can move on to the next slide. And then also on the screen, we have the consortium that puts all these things together, from the research to the implementation part. So we have some African partners that you see. So Hyperspace, bonding of the AAU, Rich in Africa, as I mentioned, Metis, and the likes. Then we have our European counterparts that you also see, BPI France, our project coordinators from Standbys, WhatsApp, EBN, all of them coming together. We can move on to the next slide. So you see on the screen also the mission of the project. As I have already stated, the framework that we're building, we built it around a human-centered approach. So it was very iterative, right from putting together the questionnaires that we use for our surveys and the interviews, to the development of the framework, was all harnessed around the human-centered approach. And we had a number of programs and activities that helped. Let me give a bit of it. So beyond informing people about how they can conduct research, whether they are coming up with some innovative ideas or solutions, we also provided guidance into the 4 pilot areas, being Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, and South Africa. So there were webinars that explained the opportunities in the research and innovation space in these ecosystems. And then we also provided what we call the learning expedition. So a number of people were selected that actually were in these countries to experience what the ecosystem is like, so that they can understand whether their solutions or research activities will flourish, or they can even develop some kind of collaboration, which is also very important to us and the project. And then we provided a soft landing for those that felt like, okay, these are countries that I want to do business in, or conduct some research in, or build some collaborative network in. And so we provided that soft landing where our partners in those countries supported these ones to enter into those countries. And the implementation, as I said, took place in these 4 countries. But fortunately, for some of the activities, there are some stakeholders, R&I stakeholders from other countries beyond these 4 pilot regions that joined, and then some European countries that also participated in the soft landing and learning expedition. We can move on. Okay, so I think that I've spoken about all these ones, so we can move to the next slide. In terms of the key findings, we realized that there is limited access to funding. I think that when you talk to anyone concerning research and innovation, this is one of the major things that will be mentioned. However, I think that in the learning expedition in Ghana, there was this experience that someone shared, that the way he imagined that he needed so much money to scale up his business from South Africa to Ghana. It's not like that. Sometimes it is just about the network that you need to fast track things, and not necessarily raising some huge amounts of money. So yes, that's one of the things. Despite the fact that money is needed, sometimes we can find alternative means of also scaling our innovative ideas to other parts of the continents and even to Europe. And also, we found that the collaboration between industry, um, academia, the research institutions, and also the digital innovation hubs is very lean. There's a very poor connection between the two. So if we actually want to enhance the research and innovation space in digital, then there's a need to also foster that strong alignment. And that is why our pilot activities brought together these stakeholders from industry, academia, research, digital innovation space, and then the startup space together to have a conversation and see how they can leverage on the opportunities and all areas to improve the things that we do in this space. Of course, as for infrastructure defects, I can say that the space in Ghana is is growing. South Africa is more advanced, and we see Kenya also quickly catching up. But a lot can be done in this space. So it is not always about the fact that these facilities do not exist, but it is also about the knowledge for people to take advantage of uh, such facilities or infrastructures that exist. So one of the things that came up, especially in our research, is to support women and especially those from the marginalized groups to be equipped with the needed skills to take advantage of the infrastructure development in the ecosystem. That will help enhance the innovative solutions that they are developing, or even help facilitate a better and quality research activities undertaken to help industry and academia. I've already spoken about inclusivity. Um, Mostly women and the youth are sidelined in such activities, but it's very important to uh, host everybody along so that we do not leave anybody behind, especially in terms of digital advancement. Because now everything is becoming digital, and we know digital is just an enabler. So if somebody is not equipped with the skills or the tools to take advantage of the digital transformation, then everything is bound to fail. Policy is a big thing. And so we need to find ways of engaging the policymakers. We know it's very difficult. It's not only in Africa, but also in Europe. Aligning with policymakers is always an issue. And so there's a need to find ways of engaging them. And then that is why we are coming up with this policy brief. And each of us can take advantage of the outcomes of these policy engagement and use it and integrate it in whatever we do. But we bring the policymakers on board, helping them to understand where we are in terms of digital transformation, research, and innovation, so that when they are also coming up with any policy, they can consider it from these perspectives. Please, we can move on to the next slide. So once we are able to leverage on the opportunities and access we have in the ecosystem regarding these limitations that we have in the ecosystem, we can all work on it holistically, because this is not a Ghana, Kenya, or South Africa issue. It's a continental issue and even an intercontinental issue, because we see some of these gaps also in Europe. But what we want to forge or foster is a strong collaboration that can help to either scale innovations to Europe or also scale them to Africa. We know that the European market is hugely saturated with a lot of innovation because they are already advanced. But some of these innovations, when well adopted, can also be very good for the African ecosystem. But in some instances, people just copy and paste. They just bring what is in Europe to some African countries and expect that it's going to work the same as in Europe. But truth is, our research indicated that innovations do not even work the same in 2 or 3 African countries. So realize that there are some limitations or opportunities in East of Africa that does not apply to the West, and same to the South. And so when we are even scaling innovation from Africa to Africa, there's the need to consider the adaptation strategies and even whether that aligns very well
the PowerPoint
with
isn't
the
moving because
needs.
you're supposed to wrap up here.
Yes, the needs and also even the policies that are expected to drive them. So yes, this is a summary of what the SEADE project is about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. You can use the react button on your screen and give him an applause, please. He's done very, very well in giving us a heads up on the overview of the SEADE project. Thank you very much for your explanation, also your presentation, Mr. Breffel. The next person I'm going to introduce is another contributor to the project. He is hailing from the other pilot region in Kenya, and is with the Wazi app. Wazi app is a Swahili term, means open up. So let me introduce Mr. Joseph Chitoti. You're welcome, Joseph.
Thank you, Hagiman. Yeah, so I think we're now on the needs assessment slide, and Gideon has done a good job to just describe some of the key findings that we got following our research. It would be interesting to also probably get your input in form of comments regarding anything that we have left out or anything that would emphasize on what we found out. And probably that would now help as we go to discuss the recommendations. Yeah, so that we can probably enhance our output. Otherwise, yes, these were the main outcomes regarding the mapping. So interesting enough, at least from the 4 countries and the 4 pilot regions that were selected in the SEADE, following the research, we got several policies and strategies, over 100 plus, which is a good thing because it already showed that we have a good definition of structure that can help to probably align various aspects of our R&I ecosystem. Then we are probably aware of some of the fundamental things that form this policy. For example, the joint African-European strategy that links European and African research and innovation ecosystem, and then the Agenda 2063, where SEADE is also based on, and then the TISTA, and then the EU Innovation Agenda, which probably the highly referenced when it comes to policies and strategies for research and innovation. Then we used this output to define the needs, the process for analyzing needs, as we have already shown some of those that we found before. And finally, also, this helped to now help the project and its outputs to get to various organizations, notable organizations and institutions in each of these pilot regions, and also in other countries out of the pilot regions. Next slide, please. Yeah, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so following this analysis, here we summarize just a bit of the recommendations. So I think go to the previous slide. Yeah, the recommendations, the needs were further divided into two main parts. That is those that affect the EU and Sub-Saharan Africa, and then those that are specific to the pilot region, so Kenya, Ghana, Senegal, and South Africa, that we will show in the next slide. We have further just defined them. When you'll be able to read the full report, it would show you that the EU SSA, we just call them like global policy recommendation, global needs, and then those that are affected by, are being specific to the countries, that becomes the local needs. And we come up with general recommendations. The full report has more analysis and also recommendations for each of these with very nicely defined, very nice definitions of the specific needs. So this is more like a generalization just for you to easily digest in this presentation, but then there is more in the documentation. And for culture, for example, we say that probably we need to define technology that fits communities and not communities to fit the technology. That means that that means that when we are working on solutions, they need to we need to start from understanding the needs of the communities and not to build technology and then take it to the communities. So that is one thing that we need to ensure that our innovators are aware of as they work on their solutions. Then the case of funding has several definitions. There is funding at the level of one ability not to get the opportunity. That means that you are aware of the funding opportunities, but then you don't have the skills to apply for them. That means that you need to then find some capacity building, a way in which probably link with various capacity building platforms that can give you the knowledge on funding and its application. Then there is a second level where you are totally not aware of these funding opportunities. So by that, what you need to do is to probably it is in both ways. Those that are providing these opportunities, they need to find a way in which that communication gets to the innovators, and also the other way, these innovators that do not have knowledge in these opportunities, they need to be part of communities and channels that can help them get this information and the rest are on legal barriers, inclusivity, and infrastructure. So there wouldn't be, I wouldn't spend so much time to explain each one of them, but in a more general fashion, we just say that innovators should own their own projects and not to have so many red tapes that prevent that ease of building a solution and taking it to the market. Then the issue of inclusivity, as Gideon has mentioned, and further infrastructure. So there has to be provision of various tools that help innovators actually develop their solutions. Next slide, please. We have the case of the specific countries, and in Ghana, we say mentorship is one of the main challenges. So for this, we need to, there has to be some kind of benchmark, yeah, some kind of benchmark which enables the researchers to, enables now the Ghana as a country to borrow probably some lessons learned from other pilot regions that have been successful. For example, they could learn what Kenya is doing, what South Africa is doing, what Senegal is doing, etc., and try to transfer the same to the country. And then for Kenya also, awareness is one of the main issue, and generally we need the communication channels that actually easily get to the innovators, and also a lot of initiative from the specific innovators to actually find these opportunities. So there has to be some high level sensitization in this case. For the case of Senegal, market linkages. So here we need this aspect of incremental scaling. That means that there should be capacity building programs that help innovators to scale their solutions, from one level to another, yeah, in some kind of defined format. And in South Africa, we have this case of involving of community leaders. So that means that in some areas, there is, how can I put it? Yeah, in some areas, there are institutions that are strong, other institutions have weak connections. So it becomes easy if the respective community leaders are involved, just to ensure that the proper channels for the transfer of the innovation is easy. Yeah, I think that is it in brief. And yeah, I think I'd like to take it back to Agimang to, yeah, proceed with the presentation.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, Joseph, for your presentation.
Thank you too. Yeah.
All right, and I'll ask for the next slide. So I'll take it from there. So I'll be taking the area of success stories and pilot activities that have come. I would want to draw my colleagues' attention to kindly move to the next slide for me. All right. Within the project and its activities, we had to look within. So I think the previous slide will be okay to commence. Thank you, brother. Yes. So just to give you an overview of the success stories that we had worked on, the SEADE project isn't the first to commence the AU-EU collaboration trajectory. There has been other activities which have been powered by AU-EU collaboration and cooperation, and we had to also look within them and understand what has been the success, so we could use that and replicate within a SEADE project. Out of 30 submissions that were received, we actually evaluated 27 out of them all. And these were within the area of technology and digital innovation, agriculture, healthcare, education, and finance. Next slide, please. Next slide. Sorry. Yes. And we had to also appreciate what the factors were that led to the success. And we found that one was strong partnerships. Now, these initiatives, some of which BIC Africa, African EU, and a whole lot more, that if you've been following EU cooperation and these initiatives and interventions, you know about these programs. And strong partnerships, key to these projects is that they were able to build local partnerships, continental partnerships, regional partnerships that were able to help them get contact and access to communities that they wouldn't have been able to reach if not for the partnership they had to build. So one key mark of success was that they had strong partnerships that give them access to communities that ordinarily you wouldn't be able to have access to. So that's one thing we had to note. The second was effective collaboration. There are several collaborations that can erupt, but collaborations that are key are the ones that every stakeholder plays a role. There's no dormant or observer. Everybody has a key role they are playing, and that helps the partnership or collaboration effective, become more efficient, and everybody has an action to play to that regard. So that aspect also is one key mark of success that we had to also note. Thirdly was user-centered design. As Mr. Brefum expounded on earlier, that for you to be able to initiate a user-centered approach, you would have to ensure that all your goals must be centered to your target. And for you to structure or model your quest and your objectives around the benefits or the needs and expectations of the user of the target is one key trait that also had to be noted. And all these initiatives were keenly targeted to the expectations, needs, and purposes of the user. Again, as capacity building, many of these projects were also having components of building capacity. Capacity in several ways, either hard kind of capacity or soft capacity. It's giving them that needed leverage in terms of knowledge, exposure, and that kind of skill they would have to harness to be able to stay effective on their own. And that's where this project also contributed massively. Another one is flexibility and adaptability. These initiatives were also flexible because they had to understand the terrain in which these players were. The actors had to remain flexible. How do you do what you're doing without stress? How do you contribute? How do you engage? And it was easily adapted to within our space or within the African space where they had to initiate or had to work with. So that is also one key trait that we also had to note down as a key success, where flexibility and adaptability were at the top of their game. Finally, is sustainability planning. These projects also lay down basics for continue to continue. They had to lay stepping stones where after the projects and its funding stream, there are some mechanisms that will keep these projects ongoing. And as of today, the likes of African Union, African EU, BIC Africa, and a whole lot more are also currently running their activities because they have been given that leverage to also stay sustainable in what they are doing. So we realize that key amongst their success was that they were to lay these top 6 active factors that we have also learned and had to also adopt within our own space. Let me call for the next slide, please. The challenges we identify through SEADE are no different from challenges that we see in our everyday activity when it comes to project implementation. Funding constraints were one area where we all know the limited resources for project scalability and sustainability. Another one is infrastructure limitation. There is a scarcity or a slight or a thin gap within trying to put out infrastructure that solves all the problems we're facing within the digital ecosystem. Inadequate technology, internet access facilities, especially in rural areas. These are very disturbing. And when you see how these things pan out, it really, really distorts your vision when it comes to trying to close the gap in the area of digital ecosystem improvement. Technical skill gaps also came into the space where you do not have adequate technically skilled personnel within the space to be conducting these trainings and support activities that you want to be happening. So the shortage in technical expertise and training resources also play a very key role in our analysis. Regulatory barriers. Our ecosystem hasn't got all that it needs to thrive on when it comes to regulatory support. There's still some sort of bleak and complex restrictive policies that affect project implementation, and it was one key area that we had to note. Cultural resistance. Some hesitancy to adopt new technologies, a whole lot of I would say the noise in trying to adopt new trends, technologies, and its repercussions and consequence on society. The whole lot you had to consider. The people had a lot to consider, and the methods due to cultural and traditional practices also was keen to note. Coordination challenges, difficulties in managing multi-stakeholder collaborations across regions, getting partners to support and also tie in their visions to yours was also quite a daunting one because of the whole diversity and differences that were already existing. Next slide, please. However, the SEADE project still had to forge its way ahead, and some of the success that we were able to chalk were we were able to deliver 4 webinars on pilot regions with 142 attendees, providing key market insight, 2 learning expeditions to Ghana, where we had 30 participants, and South African participants as well, 8 of them who joined the 13 Ghanaians in this expedition. We also had 2 soft landing programs, which was to support stakeholders on how they could engage in other pilot regions. The soft landing program was a very wonderful one, helping these stakeholders to appreciate how the terrain was and how they could easily do business or gain route to market within the pilot region. So support ability to South Africa and Senegal, 10 participants each, and also 1 research and innovation to industry e-pitching event, which also accommodated 49 participants, and 1 reverse pitch for 59 participants. A training program that was launched had 188 applications received and processed. Next slide, please. 2 learning expeditions to Kenya and to Belgium, Luxembourg with Ivorian actors. The cooperation with Enable. 2 soft landing programs to Kenya and Ghana. Training program supporting knowledge development. Digital innovation youth training program in Kenya. A bootcamp training program to bridge the gap between research and market success, which held several episodes online, and research and innovation to industry matchmaking activity through BPI France Euroquity platform. Next slide. These are the insights from SEADE pilot activities that I want to share with you. SEADE held a number of activities across its 4 pilot regions, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, South Africa. And these are just a brief summary of the learnings from that area. We realized that there were some fragmentation of funding and innovation support. The amount of funding that is expected to drive the digital ecosystem isn't as available as expected. It's quite fragmented, it's separated across the space, and you would rather want it to be more centralized and more robust. But that is also one area we had to learn and note that as we progress on, we should be able to see how we can intensify funding and then integrate it as how we want it. The demand for digital tools and matchmaking. The ecosystem is growing. Many stakeholders want to go digital, from academia, civil society organizations, even government. And across the equitable helix, every stakeholder wants to go digital. They all demand for the tools, and they all want to have that kind of matchmaking opportunity with other stakeholders. The viable or the enabling space has not been maturely prepared yet, and we look forward to that. Mobility constraints disproportionately affected African innovators. So it is also coming to note that one area of cooperation across the continent, AU, EU, is that we should be able to be mobile. We should be able to move across these spaces and then collaborate and engage. But there are constraints, several constraints that really deter African players or actors from engaging with European actors, vice versa. In some cases, the complexities are actually unnecessary, and it has to be halved. It has to be halved so that we can have that kind of free entry and exit across regions for engagements that are very, very, very significant. Strong appetite for commercialization skills and regulatory clarity. Interestingly, many institutions are seeing the need for them to commercialize findings and gain route to market. And this appetite is good for a time like this because AU-EU cooperation is growing to a point that we haven't seen before. It is actually evolving massively, and that support is on its way. What we need to do is position our institutions for such engagement and also ensure we have regulatory support to bolster these ideas and initiatives. We look forward to that. Low awareness of existing AU-EU innovation tools. Another quite unfortunate aspect that was found was that many stakeholders have no idea or have less idea on some of these AU-EU innovation tools that are meant to support in funding, in collaboration, in partnership, and also route to market. And it is important that we use platforms like these and many more which will emerge to sound the opportunities that are actually available from EU-AU collaboration to help stakeholders who are gathered here. It doesn't matter where you are coming from, either academia, CSO, civil society organizations, government, researchers, innovation hubs. You can also have your opportunity in there because it's a very encapsulating, a very integrated platform where you can also gain access. Like the Enriching Africa, which was mentioned by Mr. Gideon Brefo, it's a place that you can also visit. You can also look at the AEIP and a whole lot more. These are all trying to strengthen AU-EU support through these innovation tools. Finally, is language and inclusivity barriers, which we believe that as we roll beyond Africa and Europe, there may be these very, I'll say, dent of language and inclusivity barriers, but we have been able to highlight it. And with this highlight, we've been able to create awareness that we create no barrier for anybody, from gender, from language. Each and every one has an opportunity to gain access to these amazing offers and opportunities to grow themselves and reach their dreams. Thank you very much. And at this moment, I'm going to turn the spotlight to my colleague, Ms. Isabella Katainakwa, to give us the recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Dr. Dakon, and also to the previous presenters, Gideon and Joseph, for setting the scene with the insight from the SEADE project. And also, once again, thank you to the participants for joining us. I am Isabella Tetahinakwa from the Association of African Universities, and I'll be taking you through the policy recommendations. I've turned on my camera just to introduce myself, but as you are aware, I'm the one sharing the presentation, and it's quite slow due to internet. So permit me to turn off my camera so that I'll be able to present accordingly. Thank you. All right. So I will start with the evidence base that informed these policy recommendations. That is how we moved from implementations and also observations to an evidence-based policy recommendation. Now, these policy recommendations that I'll be presenting were grounded in 3 sources of evidence. First one was from the SEADE pilot activities, which you just heard from Dr. Dakon. So through these activities, we generated insight into what works, what didn't work, and also what were the barriers. Then the second insight were taken from the analysis of the EU-AU-RNI success stories that we gathered. And also these actually provided us some kind of a comparative lens to allow us validate whether the challenges we we observed during the implementation of the SEADE project cut across both EU-AU cooperation, or it is separately? And then lastly, from feedback from stakeholders, we engaged throughout the project. And these were from the needs assessment. Gideon and Joseph mentioned that various activities, the workshops, boot camps, learning expeditions, among others. All these implemented, and also the engagement we got from the stakeholders allowed us to ensure that these policy recommendations we are coming up actually respond to real challenges. So these were where we got the insight from to develop the policy recommendations, not just to disseminate, but also to inform future interventions in order for them to address the challenges which has been shared already. Okay. Yeah, so we got a set of 8 policy recommendations to form kind of a framework for strengthening AU-EU research and innovation in the digital ecosystem, particularly when we are talking about a route to market initiative. So one is to enhance AU-EU systemic coordination and innovation governance. 2 is to expand capacity for translating research into market-ready innovation, to harmonize digital regulatory and IP frameworks, to develop sustainable fit-for-purpose financing pathways, to facilitate cross-border mobility for innovators and researchers, to strengthen institutional IP awareness and commercialization practice, to embed gender, youth, and locality responsive participation, and then lastly, advance multilingual dissemination and localized collaboration. I'm going to dive deeper into these recommendations one after the other. So the first one is to enhance AU-EU systemic coordination and innovation governance. And this recommendation responds to the fragmentation across the AU-EU digital arena ecosystem. So we saw that across Africa and Europe, there are many programs, platforms, there are innovation hubs, there are funding opportunities, but most of them operate separately rather than in coordination. And to the actors in this ecosystem, this translates into isolated digital platform, complicated services, weak visibility of and as a result, majority of them spend more time trying to navigate the systems rather than advancing solutions. Also, collaborations are delayed, and then promising research which should be in the market struggle to scale across borders. So this recommendation is calling for coordinated governance mechanisms, shared digital standards and interoperability, multiple stakeholder steering structures, and transparent pathways for cross-border collaboration. Now, the goal is to reduce fragmentation, is to improve institutional coherence, and also enable innovators to move more efficiently from research to market across regions. When it comes to what SEADE or SEAD did in order to kind of address this challenge, first, we provided a practical evidence that when we are talking about coordination among EU-AU, it is very necessary and it is also feasible. So through the joint ecosystem mapping, which Joseph made mention, we were able to identify multiple legacy and non-legacy tools previously dispersed or operating separately and were quite difficult to navigate. However, through SEAD, we were able to integrate these tools into the SEADE digital environment, which is on the Enrich in Africa digital platform, creating a single access point for matchmaking, for funding opportunities, as well as visibility. Also, when we look at the activities and the capacity building activities that were implemented, these were in coordination between AU partners and then the EU partners. And we would attest to the fact that this brought a lot of connection between researchers and innovators across more than 10 AU-EU countries. So this actually shows that when we're talking about coordination, and in terms of service delivery between EU-AU members, when there is a coordinated It is quite needed and it is very necessary as well as feasible. And this actually improves interoperability, it improves partner identification as well as the efficiency when it comes to collaboration. So the key message from this recommendation is that coordination is not about creating new structures. It is aligning what already exists, just like SEADE did, looking into what other legacy initiatives, and then get to know what didn't work, take insight from to implement our own. So aligning what already exists through shared governance as well as transparent collaboration pathways. Now, the second recommendation is to expand capacity for translating research into market-ready innovation. And this addressed the gap between research output and then market-ready innovation. So it was shown that while there are universities, research institutions, and startups across both continents are generating promising, innovation prototypes, majority of them struggle to move beyond from the proof of concept to the market. And the challenge is not because they lack ideas, but rather the limited skills in terms of commercialization, which includes the gaps in market validation, business development, regulatory navigation, investment preparation, IP protection, as well as engagement with industry. I think Mr. Gideon made mention of these when he was talking about the needs assessment. So therefore, this policy recommendation is calling for a multi-level innovation skills framework that is going to combine harmonized commercialization curricula, scalable digital learning environments, industry co-creation opportunities, and then stronger DIH and TTOs structures in various institutions. Now, the key element is the integration of applied IoT and AI innovation models into higher education and training systems, which is going to ensure that market readiness is added way earlier than later. When it comes to what SEADE did to prove that this is doable and is actually based on evidence, is based on what we have seen and experienced. So through the Digital Youth Training Program in Kenya and Tanzania, we had 20 early stage innovators received hands-on training using the WASI Lab, WASI Development Board, and then AIoT tools and cloud platform. Now, the participants gradually progressed from early concepts of commercially oriented prototypes to demonstrate how practice-based learning provides and technical maturity, and then market orientation. So through gradual hands-on training, they were able to come up from ideas to prototyping to developing great innovations, which actually address challenges or address gaps or issues on the market. Also through the SEADE boot camps, which actually strengthened investors' readiness, regulatory understanding. We had a lot of boot camps on 5 main themes, some on strategies to empower women and youth, some on strategies to find and funding opportunities, some are is on in terms of collaboration between EU, AU, among others. So we had 5 main themes when it comes to the SEADE boot camps. And the main purpose was to strengthen investment readiness, regulatory understanding, and also industry co-creation capacity. And also through the match making activities, we were able to support early stage collaboration between research, startups, and then industry actors. And this actually shows that it is doable when we are talking about strengthening capacity. These our actors are able to translate their research into market innovation. So what we are saying is commercialization skills must be institutionalized and not delivered as a short-term or project-bound intervention. We are also saying that to expand research translation capacity, it requires the integration of innovation skills into education, training, as well as institutional support. Now, when commercialization training and also digital learning and industry engagements are aligned, we believe that research outputs are far more likely to reach to the market and also deliver impacts across both EU and EU continents. The third policy recommendation is to harmonize digital, regulatory, and intellectual property frameworks. And this responds to the regulatory fragmentation and also uneven intellectual property governance across borders. Now, we realized, or it was identified, that when it comes to cross-border innovation, they are constrained by divergent data protection rules, cybersecurity requirements, contractual standards, research ethics procedures, as well as IP ownership models. And this challenge is more directed to the new innovations and new technologies that are coming up, the emerging technologies such as AI, IoT, and then machine learning, which are actually advancing faster than what we have in terms of regulatory frameworks that are available, especially in Africa. And also when it comes to the institutional level, many universities, DIH, and also research organizations lack specialized expertise when it comes to IP management, when it comes to ethics, navigation, licensing, negotiation, as well as co-ownership framework. And so as a result of this, we see that a lot of high potential innovations are delayed, they are mostly undervalued, and even are abandoned due to regulatory and legal uncertainty. A lot of people are not quite aware of what regulatory frameworks actually governs when it comes to even commercializing your innovation or trying to partner with an investor. What are the rules and regulations? What are the IP protections framework that are available in even the country level, the national level, and just to even go to the continental level? A lot of them are not aware of these frameworks. So we are calling for a joint AU-EU digital regulatory and IP governance that are in alignment with agenda with regards to AU-EU collaboration. And we are saying that this agenda should focus on shared digital governance principles, ethical and compliance processes, as well as common standards for AI, IoT, and machine learning, and predictable technology transfer and IP ways. We know that when it comes to formalizing or harmonizing legislative frameworks, it takes it's a long-term governmental process. So we are proposing that we can start immediately through shared tools, some templates, some literacy mechanism, as well as some institutional coordination. When it comes to what SEADE did, so through the mapping and analysis activities, as Joseph mentioned, we were able to map over 100 digital and R&I policies, strategies, as well as governance frameworks. And these are available and accessible on the AI platform. And it actually gives innovators and actors some kind of comparative regulatory clarity for them to know what are the rules and what are the regulations that are going to govern them when it comes to IP protection, when it comes to commercializing or selling your innovations, among others. So these are available on the AIC platform, which I encourage each and everyone to log in to have access to. Also, our boot camps, like I mentioned, we had 5 main themes, and some actually translated complex requirements such as the Horizon Europe compliance. We had one of our partner, Crispin, taking the participants through when it comes to for you to be the criteria to be able to get funding or to be able to comply with Horizon Europe initiative, among others, research ethics, IP co-ownership, and due diligence into practical guidance. All these were provided during the bootcamp initiative to improve regulatory preparedness. Also, through the training program, learning expeditions, we gave to the innovators. They were exposed when it comes to real regulatory and administrative environments across regions. So we had some who were interested in, for example, in Ghana, we had some of the participants or the learning expedition participants who were interested to come into the ecosystem, in the Ghanaian ecosystem, to the market. So we introduced them to the real regulatory frameworks that is governing each country, each pilot regions, and they were much aware of what they should do, the next step, and others. Also, the EU actors gain first-hand understanding when it comes to African licensing and data governance context. And then the African partners, they strengthen their capacity to navigate EU compliance. Like I mentioned, we provided them how they can comply with Horizon Europe initiative fundings, among others. So when it comes to regulatory and IP alignment, we know that it is not abstract in terms of policy ambition, but something that is practical and a practical enabler for innovation scalability. And we actually demonstrated that shared digital intelligence, regulatory literacy, and also institutional support can bridge when it comes to governance gap, while also laying the foundation for long-term convergence, and then strengthening investors' confidence, accelerating commercialization, and also enabling responsible deployment for emerging technologies across both continents. The next slide is to develop sustainable, fit-for-purpose financing pathways. I'm sure majority of you would have been expecting this should be the first recommendation, because each stakeholder we engage, what are the challenges you are facing? Just like Gideon mentioned, they all talked about funding. And so this addresses the funding challenges that kept on, popping up in our engagement with them, in our activities, among others. So we know that many EU-AU innovations, they underperform commercially, not because of weak ideas, not because they don't have the skills like that much, but because the financing or the funding systems are not kind of designed for long-term or for long development cycles, for high technical uncertainty, and for extended testing or regulatory validation. For example, grants that most of these innovators or research institutions receive are often too rigid to support progression towards investment, and also private capitals requires traction to science-based innovation, which much of them cannot demonstrate at early stages. And with this promising level. Yeah, majority of them ends at the prototype level. Another challenge. Yeah. Another challenge related to funding is weak awareness of available opportunities, funding opportunities, limited access to investor networks, and insufficient institutional capacity to prepare competitive proposal and negotiation investment terms. All these were identified during the implementation in terms of funding of the SEADE project. So we are saying that, or we are calling for an EU research commercialization financing framework that is going to support full innovation life cycle from the ideation to prototyping then to the market, so that at least when it gets to the market, it knows that it is going to commercialize and then receive back and also keep on going. And this should include blended financing approach, prototyping to scale funds, like I made mention, grants to investment pathways, and then co-investment incentive and guarantees that reduce risk for private capital. Also, structured and better access to programs such as Horizon Europe, the EIC, and then the ADCTP are also crucial when it comes to ensuring that African research can actually compete on more equal footing. And in terms of what we did, what SEADE did, through the e-pitching and the reverse pitching sessions, innovators had the opportunity to engage directly with investors both in Africa and Europe, and they gained exposure to their expectation. They were also provided with team sheet logic and also investment decision making. Now, when it comes to the tools and funding opportunities on the SEADE digital environment, we integrated funding opportunities and matchmaking tools like the VC4A, Euroquity, Africa Arena, Digital Collective, Africa, and then InnoWide. All these are accessible and available on the EIAC platform as a single access point for innovators to go through, navigate through these tools, and then find funding opportunities. As the challenge where they don't have access, or most of them are even not aware of the funding opportunities. So we are saying that through SEADE, we were able to provide these opportunities easily for innovators to get access when they go to the platform. And then, like I made mention on our bootcamp, we had one which focuses on funding opportunities for innovators and researchers. And this actually strengthened proposal development, financial structuring, IP positioning, and also investment readiness. And then the Digital Youth Training Program also further enhanced prototyping maturity and financial literacy. So we kind of build capacity when it comes to financial literacy, and just not that, we also provided access to funding opportunities through the SEADE digital environment. And then the next is to facilitate cross-border mobility for innovators and researchers. Now, despite the emphasis that are placed on, when it comes to collaboration between the EU member states and AU member states, there are still great hindrances when it comes to mobility, especially Africans moving to Europe. And although there is a growing political commitment to Africa-Europe research and innovation collaboration, the mobility framework, I must say, remain fragmented, unpredictable, and actually do not align with the realities. We have visa delays, refusals, and high travel costs, which actually prevent some of our participants, during the implementation of SEADE. It prevented some of our participants from attending some of our programs. And this was not actually limited to the beneficiaries or the participants only. Even some of the project partners from Africa, despite being part of an EU-funded project, despite being part of SEADE, some of us faced visa uncertainty when traveling for project meetings and also programs, as well as EU hosted events. Using myself as an example, I was denied visa for SEADE-related travel, despite submitting completed documentation, traveling purposes, and all that. I was still denied visa to go for SEADE-related program. So it is not just at the level of the beneficiaries or researchers and even the consortium partners phases. So we are saying that there should be a coordinated EU-AU innovation mobility framework, and this should include fast-track and multi-entry visa channels for R&I actors, a unified documentation requirement, mutual recognition of validated institutions such as universities, research institutions, DIH, and then a dedicated mobility budget, particularly for the youth and women. Yes, we realize that when it comes to inclusivity, most of the women do not get access or funding opportunity when it comes to mobility. So this framework should include this. And then the framework should also embed reciprocity when it comes to ensuring African innovators have equal access, just like European actors or innovators have. When it comes to European coming to Africa, it is quite easy for them. However, when it comes to African moving to the European country, it is more difficult. So we are proposing that there should be a fast-track visa processing, unified mobility documentation, reciprocal simplified AU administrative pathway, and then a dedicated budget for youth and women actors in the ecosystem. And then strengthen IP awareness and commercialization practice. This is linked to the previous one I mentioned in terms of regulation and IP alignment, but kind of addresses a different level of the system. So the previous one focuses on the framework, but this focuses on capability, practices, and then execution at the institutional and then actors level. So we saw that even where regulatory pathway exists, even where the frameworks are available, many researchers and startups, they lack the practical knowledge and institutional support needed to protect, to license, and then commercialize their innovation. Now, this was confirmed in our needs assessment, where we saw that there is gaps in IP literacy. Innovators, majority of them lack basic questions around ownership, licensing, co-creation agreements, confidentiality, TTOs, among others. Majority of them lack this knowledge, this literacy. And in most of African universities and research institutions, their TTOs also remain under-resourced, with limited specialized staff, uncleared operating models, and weak exposure to international commercialization practice. Another challenge we identified was low awareness and access to IP tools and support mechanism, including the AFRI-IP, WIPO, and then EU advisory services. So we realized that without clear guidance on which instrument for them to use, most of them often default to informal protection or no protection at all. And we actually address this gap through practical and then embedded intervention. So one of the tools, legacy tools that was integrated onto the SEADE data platform was the AFRI-IP Dex help tool, which is available on the platform to allow innovators to access IP guidance alongside funding intelligence and the matchmaking tools. So we also had IP ownership training, which was integrated into the bootcamp session to strengthen investors' readiness as well as when it comes to due diligence preparedness. And then again, the digital youth training also had a session on IP management, on IP awareness and data handling, and among others. And also internally, during the SEADE implementation, the partners, we had 4 different workshops all on IP management to help us understand our background and also foreground in terms of IP governance. So therefore, this recommendation is calling for a cross-continental intellectual property enablement framework that actually is going to complement the regulatory alignment by strengthening how institutions and innovation actually operate. And also, we believe that integrating IP advisory services into digital platform, just like we did on the SEADE digital environment, is going to increase legal certainty, is going to improve investment readiness, and also technology transfers across AU-EU innovation ecosystem. Then we have embedding gender, youth, and locality responsive participation as a policy recommendation. Now, we realize that despite the strong interest and demand when it comes to youth and women, and then as well as innovators outside or in the rural areas being part of initiative, majority of them still do not get access when it comes to full research to market initiative, when it comes to skills, when it comes to prototyping, to investment and exposure, when it comes to consortium formation, when it comes to leadership, we realize that there is still the gap there. And this actually reinforces it with live realities. Like I made mention, the mobility constraints, domestic responsibilities. Most of these women are engaged in terms of house and domestic responsibility. When it comes to safety consideration, all these are some of the gaps that are hindering majority of the women and youth into participating in R&I initiative. Now, through the SEADE project, we got to know that inclusion cannot be achieved through outreach alone. And even with youth and women being identified as priority groups, we also, if you look at our participation rate, we saw that the levels still remain lower. And this actually shows that inclusion must be included into program architecture. For example, during the digital youth training, it shows that effectiveness when it comes to decentralized hands-on learning environment it's needed when it comes to you really actually engaging women and youth. You have to be intentional about it and ensure that implementation is decentralized and also the learning experience is hands-on. So through the DYT program, the youth innovators, particularly women and youth, they gain confidence, they gain technical skills, as well as commercial awareness because it was hands-on and it was localized. We went to the DIH in the town to help to collaborate with them to ensure that the participants or the actors or the innovators are kind of reliable because it is an organization within them that is implemented. Although it is EU funded, we reach out to the local institutions to help us implement this activities. Another way we also try to address this was the bootcamp, which focuses on strategies for youth and women empowerment. Now this actually showed some AU-EU frameworks such as the Agenda 20. So we had a participant sharing frameworks that actually support women and youth when it comes to inclusion in R&I ecosystem. So we had frameworks such as the Agenda 2063. We have the AU digital education strategies as well as CESA. All these were presented and shared with the participants for them to be aware and also confident when it comes to inclusion. Then the last recommendation is to advance multilingual dissemination and localized collaboration. And this addressed the language barrier which was identified during the implementation of SEADE project, and also the success stories we gathered, especially the EU initiative. We know that most of them operate across multilingual landscape, but when it comes to the delivery, when it comes to dissemination, by default, it is only English. And as a result, many innovators, the youth, women, rural entrepreneurs, community-based researchers, majority of them face difficulty when it comes to engaging fully with capacity building activities with digital platform, and that sometimes funding guidance or criteria when the language does not really align with their working proficiency. So for example, during the platform we realized that participants in Senegal actually had challenges because the platform was English dominant, the interface was English dominant. So we really did not have the engagement when it comes to really fully participating in terms of having advantages of the platform. So we realize that it's a barrier. It is hindering them to fully, engage when it comes to the platform because it is English dominant. So they suggested that we should have kind of a translated version, French, Arabic, Portuguese, those African languages that we use for work proficiency. We should have the digital platform having incorporated these languages in there so that at least it is not just English dominant, but it reaches, in terms of inclusivity, it reaches all these actors. And for the capacity building, yes, so we had some, especially in the pilot region, Senegal, we had some being delivered in French, and that actually showed that yes, if your initiative or your activities is implemented in the language that is within the country, you get a lot of participants. So we realized that we had a lot of participants and joining our activities in French, especially those in Senegal. So we are calling for embedding multilingual dissemination as well as localization directly into AU-EU program architecture, especially if it cuts across multilingual pilot regions or regions. You should ensure that whatever your delivery, your dissemination, your implementation, whether it's a digital platform, you should ensure that it has different language to reach the majority of people. Now, to conclude, it is important we reflect on why this recommendation actually matters, and also why this webinar is needed. Now, we have shown and demonstrated through the pilot activities, through the success stories, and also the stakeholders' feedback, we have shown that the challenges are not actually isolated because it cut across all these insight that we gathered when it comes to coordination, commercialization, capacity, regulatory, financing, among others. We saw that it cut across both EU and AU, and then when one fails, then the goal of research to market is weakened. You're not going to achieve it. So in order for us to achieve our goal, we need to address all these together. And I know for sure majority will be saying there have been many project recommendations. There have been a lot of recommendations from previous projects, and that nothing has really changed. We are still back again repeating or saying all this. Yes, there have been, but we are not ignoring. We coming again to stress on this shows that we are not ignoring the reality. And for us to be able to achieve our goal on ensuring that this recommendation or policy recommendations are implemented and are are done by the higher level and also by ourselves, because these recommendations are not only directed to the higher level, we are also involved in it. Our role today, as we are participating in this webinar and listening to the policy recommendation, we can include these recommendations in our activities, in our discussions, in our program design. In terms of funding, when you're writing proposals, you can state all these recommendations in your discussions with high-level stakeholders, with your engagement with people. And we are also encouraging you all to reference them in your presentations, in your meetings with decision makers, especially, because if we are all involved in ensuring that these policy recommendations gets to the real stakeholders or the people who need to hear, we believe that then of course we are going to implement it. So this is just to present to you what we have come out in terms of policy recommendation. However, the detailed document, the detailed policy recommendation is going to be published, and we are going to share the link with you to have access to the detailed one once it is published. And also, we are hoping and looking forward to organize a high-level policy dialogue, which is going to bring together key stakeholders to deliberate on practical pathways when it comes to adopting and also implementing these policy recommendations. So when the date is set and everything, preparation is set, we are going to send an invitation to you all to join this high-level policy stakeholders, so that at least it's not just going to be coming out with a recommendation and just publishing, but to ensure that we are actually adopting to it. I mean, there should be some success when it comes to implementing these recommendations. So I know, yes, of course, there have been previous policy recommendations, and yes, this is what SEADE is saying, but there are steps ahead, and we are encouraging you all to support us and ensure that it reaches to the key stakeholders, and in terms of adoption and implementation, it is done. Now, to conclude, yes, we are ending the SEADE project this December 2025. However, our legacy stays on. Enriching Africa Digital Platform is still on. We are encouraging you all to log in. If you're not a champion or if you have not registered yet, we are encouraging you all to go online and enrichinafrica.com and then register to be part of our legacy. All the funding opportunities are available for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isabella, for your presentation and concluding with the policy recommendation. So to you all stakeholders who are gathered here, you've seen what we've been able to do through the SEADE projects in collaboration with our partners who have been with us right from day one. And it's all to strengthen the digital ecosystem where you also actively participate. As Ms. Isabella has said, that there are lots of activities going on the Enriching Africa platform. So do all to visit www.enrichinafrica.com, where you will see the platform where you can register as a champion. So as a champion, you are open to so many opportunities where there's less limitation for you. Wouldn't want to take much of your time. So at this moment, some words of some of your remarks or comments from any of you who wants to make a comment to this accomplishment. You can put your hand up. We'll just take a few comments if you have any comment to share. If not, we'll have to bring it to an end. All right then. All right then. More is to come, and hopefully next year there will be a bigger platform where we can share more of the policy dialogues. But for now, I want to say thank you very much for your time and for your engagement. We look forward to catch you next year. Enjoy the holidays to the fullest, and catch you next year for more other AU policy dialogues. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Before we go, please put your cameras on so we can have a photograph, okay? Don't forget that. Yes. So please kindly have your camera on for a short photograph before we call it a day. Okay, so hi Gideon, hi Charles, hi Vincent, hi Frederick, hi Frida. Please, can you put your cameras on?
I think maybe you have to enable their video for them.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Let me just do that. Okay, so I'm allowing cameras for all participants. Yes. So I believe every one of you can put your camera on so we can have a group photograph.
Adima, I think if you are spotlighted, it might be good to take the spotlight off.
Oh, okay, sure. Yes. Great. Great. Thank you very much, Gideon. All right, so there we go. Try and have your seed. Say seed. Seed. Yeah. Say seed. Yeah. You know, in some parts of the world, the term is pronounced as SEADE. Some say seed, but I told them, you know what? Say it as you want to say it, and make sure you feel good about it. Seed is. All right, guys. Thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate. Thank you very much, team, from Standbys to Hyperspace, WhatsApp, AAU, and other partners.